Hello, everyone, and welcome to another chat with Dan Abraham. Dan, how you going?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Drew. How are you? Coming on from our last foray into the metagame. We're going to do another one.
Yeah, we thought we had a few different topics to chat about, and well, I could ask you what you think about the metagame and the decks you've been working on, and what you think's good. But I think we should say that for another time. So it's a
Yeah,
big topic.
yeah, it's true.
Um,
Yeah, but yeah, I think today we're going to have a chat about cantrips that you can play in Australian Highlander. So I'm looking forward to that. It's something we talk about often between ourselves. So we thought we might share some of our thinking around that.
yeah, and I think the topic of cantrips is fascinating in general in terms of magic theory. So I'm keen to pick up on that as well. Like, so first we should say, well, what is a cantrip? What do you think a cantrip is?
Yeah, well, I think it's usually a spell that says draw a card, or it does like draws a card, usually for a low mana investment. So they're usually 1 or 0 mana and have some sort of minor effect. It's kind of how I think about it.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so it's usually 1 mana blue spells, but there are examples of cantrips and other colors and artifacts. That's kind of how I think about it. Yourself?
Yeah, well, I think you're right. In magic parlance, you can say this card cantrips, and it just means it draws a card or it replaces itself. So I think that's a fair and valid use, and that makes sense. But if we talk about cantrips and why you would want to play cantrips, I think of it as something that offers selection. So it increases your options. It allows you to choose one or another card to replace itself. Yeah, so it doesn't gain you card advantage. It's kind of card neutral. It just replaces itself, but it crucially offers selection. So it offers you to choose one card or another. That's what I think of the importance of cantrips. Like, because Patrick Chapman, who I often quote, but he influenced my thinking and our thinking a lot. He wrote an article trying to bring all these theoretical insights together around magic, and he ultimately, I think, went too far because he said that magic's ultimately about options, and the goal of a game of magic is to remove your opponent's option of continuing to play the game, not by killing them. I think goes too far, but I think options, are important. And there's another article which drew attention to a documentary on artificial intelligence and how it kind of solved Go, or not didn't solve it, but how it became the best Go player, which is like a Japanese or game of some or heritage like that. AlphaGo is the doco, and it's really good. But this article emphasized how AlphaGo, it seems to just prefer moves which gave it the most options.
Yeah.
So, like, getting options in Magic, it seems to be important in terms of converting, in terms of winning advantages in tempo, card advantage, life, or whatever else matters in that context. So having options is important. And I see cantrips as, in the history of Magic, as really perhaps the first discovery around the importance of selection as a means of increasing your options.
Yeah, that's interesting. That strikes me as a very like blue player, like oriented way of thinking about the game. Do you know what I mean? So like you're looking to play spells as late as possible, be able to make choices based on best information as possible. Whereas like, I don't know, if I think about like say decks like Junk or what have you, where you don't really care, you want to just be on curve and just like jamming into, you don't really care, you kind of jam into counter magic. So like I think that's definitely their function, but it's interesting to think that's, I mean, blue is a very dominant color for in Magic generally. Like maybe that's the reason, is it has that strategic edge because it gets to preserve its options. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not talking just about preserving options. I think other colors, you don't have to play blue to have options, because Night of Autumn has options. You can choose to gain life, make it big, or destroy something. There's lots of ways to get options, but so maybe there were always cards like Mishra's Factory, I'll talk about later. It's a card that can give you a mana, or it can be a creature. There's an option there baked into the card itself. But cantrips are a way to like create options through card selection. Yeah, that's how I see it. And they are, you should think of blue when I say that, because like often you can jump from cantrips to like the blue cantrips. There are a few green ones now, but cantrips are like synonymous with little blue 1-drops instance, or, or sorceries, somewhat. But we'll have a look at some notable cantrips in a minute. But yeah, I think so. I may be broadening the topic a bit, but I'm thinking about Xerox. So Xerox was a strategy that everyone copied, and that's why it got the name, because it was so successful. And what it did was it took out lands and put in lots of like brainstorm and preordained effects or ops or something like that. And it played like 8 or more of these effects instead of and what it noticed was that it could play fewer lands because you had the option through these cards of getting lands in the early game, but you could also reduce, so you could play fewer lands, still not get mana screwed, but in the late game you could get really rewarded by top decking better because you got fewer lands, but also using your selection, your cantrips, to filter away your lands, even the fewer lands that you do see. So the early game was just as consistent, if not more consistent, and the late game was more consistent because it had better top decks. And so it just dominated because of that, and everyone copied it overnight. And so that for me is how I understand. And in a way, that's, Rich Shea wrote an article saying like that's the way to play Magic. Like that's just proven historically the best way to play Magic. And there's only a few other strategies that can punish that way of playing Magic. Like you can tax the cantrips or go over the top with something huge. So I think part of the function of a cantrip is you want to get to give you mana early and business late. That's part of the
I agree with that.
We'll get to that later though. And we'll see if there are any other ways of achieving that.
I also think there's like an interesting characteristic of them that like it's rarely a free effect. You are investing some tempo, so some mana in choice. And so there is like, it's not like it's a cost-free exercise. Like Cataxian Probe is probably the one that comes closest to being like free-ish, or even like some of the baubles that we'll talk about. But sometimes the tempo loss that comes with cantrips has a real cost, like particularly if you're facing down an aggro deck or something like that. So I agree, like the choice is very powerful, but it's not cost-free, I guess.
It's not free, no. It's generally not. You need to pay mana, and that's big. That's the big loss in tempo because you're not impacting the board, you're not gaining life, you're not gaining card advantage. All you're doing is increasing your options. So that better pay you back at some point because you are losing a resource in terms of mana. And so and maybe that's why there's not too many 2 and 3 mana cantrips just offering selection, because cost then just becomes too hard to recoup.
Yeah, it sort of ties up, when you're playing a format with the speed of Australian Highlander, like if you're starting to pay more than 1 mana or 0 mana for this kind of effect, you're really like almost time walking yourself. It can cost you a turn just because your mana is too compressed by the effect. But yeah, should we have a look at some common ones?
Yeah. I just want to say one more thing. Oh, and I think the next, so we talk about Xerox, and I think I should probably save this till we look at the cards, but I think one of the next, a part of the evolution of Highlander that I've noticed is that if we talk about Xerox as the way to play, I don't necessarily agree with that, but it's a powerful way to play. That loss of tempo, you're investing mana to increase your options. But the brokenness of like what Delve does in terms of like Gurmag and Tasigur and things like that is it pays you back that lost mana. You can then use your cantrips in the graveyard as mana. So that when you can do that, when you can use your cantrip to give you selection at the cost of mana, but then recoup the mana through the Delve mechanic, you're just getting the best of everything. You're getting the selection is almost free because you're getting the mana back. And that's why, as we've seen in the last, I think, year, a lot of like rug tempo and just Delve threats just doing really well, even despite the prevalence of bounce in the format and stuff.
Yeah, it's what makes like the printing of Murktide Regent so astounding, right? Because we knew this. And that's why, like even before its printing, like Gurmag had done well in Legacy just because you could just fill your graveyard and then like, so can you answer this 5/5? That's big. Like you can kill you within within a short time if your opponent's playing a bunch of fetch lands and they probably functionally start the game with 15 life. Like it's a quick clock. Really.
Yeah. So let's look at some cards and then we'll think about why play cantrips and why maybe not to play cantrips, or what are the other ways of playing. If the cantrips are so good, why are we not playing them, and what do we get if we avoid them or whatever? All right, so I'll share a screen. So Dan's highlighted some cantrips. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see that one.
All right. So this is your selection. So you've put A-Call there. Why'd you do that?
Oh, because it's fun. It draws a card at least, and it's 1 mana. It costs you some tempo, but it draws a card. I mean, obviously the card's complete bomb. It's 5 points. It's not, there's no other card in that list that's in the same league as Ancestral Recall, but it does invest mana to draw a card or more, and it's shown to be perhaps the most powerful card in history of the game.
But so does Brain Geyser. Why didn't you put Brain Geyser?
I think we were talking earlier about the mana investment that's required to draw the cards. And so there's at least 2 mana required. And so I generally didn't include things like Is It Charm and other things that draw, or Night's Whisper, that draw cards for investment of more than 1 mana for the reason. I didn't put Expressive Iteration for that reason. I think they're slightly different than a cantrip because of the increased mana investment, but I could be wrong about that. Otherwise, I could have put Remand in there as well,
Yeah, I know. There's so many things that draw a card. There's lots of creatures that draw a card as well, which is why it's important to get clear on our definition. Yeah, so on my definition, A-Call's not a cantrip. A-Call's just it's a draw spell. But on your definition, it's something cheap that draws a card and offers an additional effect of some kind. Yeah. All right. So Brainstorm. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so Brainstorm obviously, if you're splashing blue, it's probably like, if in a 4-color deck, it's definitely one of the blue spell that you play. Like it's almost, not a choice to play it because it's so powerful in a format that's full of fetch lands. Obviously, it can completely change the complexion of your hand, being able to draw 3 cards and put back 2, and then shuffle away the cards that aren't of as much use in a game. So sometimes you'll see blue mid-range decks playing only 1 cantrip, and it would be Brainstorm for that reason. And it's obviously dominant across a range of Eternal formats. So it's the defining card of Legacy, and it's restricted in Vintage. So it would be unusual to see a blue deck not play that one.
It's interesting to say, like not only does it doesn't change the complexion of your hand, it literally changes your hand. Which is, for me, like it's definitely a cantrip. It offers selection on my definition, and it doesn't gain card advantage. But by changing your hand, it does something that other cantrips don't do. Most cantrips just change your draw step or change the next card you draw. This one changes your hand, and that's big. And that's why I can give you virtual card advantage by putting away dead cards or whatever. Cards that are dead in that moment. All right, so it's very powerful, obviously. All right, Careful Study. Tell me about that one.
Okay, so let's put Careful Study and Faithless Looting in the same category so we can deal with them reasonably quickly. Like this is I don't know, I balked us for a moment at including Faithless Looting and Careful Study because they don't really replace themselves. Like there's a card disadvantage in those. You're drawing 2 cards and discarding 2 cards. But they do change the complexion of your hand. And that's particularly useful in certain kinds of graveyard-oriented combo decks. And so you'll see in Highlander, those 2 cards largely played in Reanimator and Dredge-based strategies, where you really want to be using your graveyard. I mean, Faithless Looting was banned in Modern because it was thought to be too powerful in that context. Just the selection, if you have ways to use the graveyard, is extremely powerful for 1 mana. Yeah,
and again, it changes your hand, doesn't it? It doesn't just change your draw step. So that's interesting. Right. It's interesting to know that.
There's that investment of mana to there's usually a lot of gains to be had in Magic in investing small resources to change zones between library to hand to graveyard and to battlefield. And so those are probably the 2 best spells you'll see in Australian Highlander that have that effect. At least in terms of a spell, rather than sort of Bazaar of Baghdad or something like that.
Well, I mean, you might be thinking of Mendendian and Kevin Cron. They were talking about how the power, one way to index or measure the power of a card is how many zone changes it affects. Like, is it moving cards from graveyard or library or hand or whatever? And like Bizarre Baghdad does that big time. You know, you draw 2 cards and discard 3, and Doomsday does it probably the most, because you just get rid of most of your library or whatever.
Is Doomsday a cantrip?
No,
anyway, no, it's not.
They're just saying it's a powerful card because it does so many zone changes. Yeah. It's interesting. So these cards are disadvantageous. You're going down a card, but you're getting a big selection. You're changing your hand, and you're loading up on a resource in your graveyard, which you need to recoup. Not only the tempo here, but also the card disadvantage. So you need to use that graveyard somehow to maintain parity or get an advantage. And so obviously you'd see these cards in Reanimator and other strategies.
Yeah, I mean, they're so good in that context. Like, they're so good in the graveyard context that, you know, you'll see like Reanimator based strategies that don't play Ponder or Preordain, which we'll get onto, in favor of, like, you know, they can build their decks around redundancy of similar effects. But what really matters is the movement between library to, like, they get that transition from library to graveyard, and the transition from library to hand to graveyard is particularly important because you get to see what is exactly going into your graveyard with those in a way that, say, you know, Thought Scour, mental note don't allow you to do.
Yeah, it's not, you get to choose, don't you? It's not random.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's the choice, like, you know, is important to those 2 cards and to decks that want to leverage them.
You said redundancy there, which is another point we haven't touched on. Like, so one of the keys people would, probably the first thing people would say who know a bit about cantrips, was that it increases the consistency of your deck. Like the fact those options, it allows you to see your lands or your business when you want to, and that increases consistency at all stages of the game. To the point where, like, a notable innovation in cantrip use, in my view, was in the Mox tournament of last year. A European came along, hadn't played the format before, but loaded up on cantrips. Like, they played in their rug tempo list, Serum Vision, Sleight of Hand, cantrips which we'll get to in a second, but traditionally weren't played in that archetype because they weren't thought to be good enough. But there was a huge emphasis on consistency, and he did very well with it. So that's another question. You know, is maybe we could frame this entire discussion is, you know, is 7 Point Highlander a sleight of hand format? You know, like, where does the power level of the cantrip get low enough that you're better off playing a different card? And I actually don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if sleight of hand should be in most blue decks or not. And it isn't, as a matter of fact, in most blue decks, but maybe we're all wrong.
Yeah, I mean, there could be an element of groupthink going on. I think there's, like, definitely a core set of cantrips that are commonly played, like the ones that you'll see in Vintage and Legacy, but people do start to balk at some of those, like particularly Serum Visions, which we can get onto.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll jump to that in a sec. But yeah, the last thing I'd say about careful study is, like, it would be interesting. We've talked about just graveyard-based strategies as wanting these cards, but it would be interesting if there are so many graveyard synergies and delve, you know, and other types of graveyard synergies in future that maybe just the fair normal deck will play careful study.
Yeah,
I know some. I think I've seen Mardu like Aggro-Control decks play Faithless Looting just for the hand fixing, and they don't mind the card disadvantage because they've got enough graveyard synergies.
Yeah, if you've got a way to recoup the lost value, then that's definitely possible.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we talked about, all right, sleight of hand, Serum Vision. So this is a bit of scry. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see, like in the recent events from Nationals, from CanCon, the rug decks started to get on sleight of hand. I think, which we hadn't seen for a long time. Like, it was seen to be like too underpowered compared to Preordain, like the big ones like Ponder, Preordain, Brainstorm, Tax Improve. And yet, I think Justin Chung took sleight of hand to great success. We see that the European player did the same thing, and so that it offers you, a choice, but you only have a choice of one or two. You don't really get to you don't get to keep both cards. So there is, like, if you have 2 good spells coming, you can potentially weaken your second draw. So there is, like, a slight risk there. But yeah, it's interesting to see that it's started to see play, whereas Serum Visions is just it's completely absent from contemporary deck lists. I can't remember seeing one lately.
Yeah, I mean, if it's like preordained, but you get the scry after you draw the card, so you can't select that draw step. You're just selecting future draw steps. I think Serum Vision is playable in like it's really good on turn 1 because it's the future draw steps you care about. But after that, yeah, it gets weaker.
Well, yeah, I think it's like often played in like Storm in like modern formats and things like that, where the higher powered ones aren't playable, where what really matters is setting up future turns.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know, like I can't recall seeing Serum Visions in like JP Storm or anything like that. Unless you remember, you played more Storm than I have.
No, I don't think it played Serum Visions. It played Impulse, interestingly, but which isn't on here, but it is a playable 2-mana cantrip actually, Impulse. Yeah, although more fringe playable. But yeah, like Portent does the same thing. It sort of sets up your future draw steps. I mean, it's a slow trip in the sense that you don't draw the card this turn, you draw it in the next upkeep. That can be like a minor disadvantage in a reactive deck, counter spells and things like that. Yeah, but Portent doesn't see a lot of play either. I know Michael Billinghurst and some other players have recently been higher on Portent than in the past because they don't suffer the downside too much in their perspective.
Yeah,
and they just see it as like a kind of slightly worse ponder.
Yeah, I think it's also like if it's saw play in Underworld Breach lists a lot, like recently, where again, like you really want to be digging as deep as possible to find your combo pieces quickly. So yeah, it's seen some play there. I think also, like there is something, if you're going to go for the combo, you can kind of portent your opponent. So there's something in that just to make sure that, they're less likely to have the answer to your combo the turn before you're about to go for it or what have you.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep in mind too, like Portent has seen like winning legacy play in like miracle lists and stuff like that. It's been a key card in like a powerful deck in a powerful format. So it's obviously a good card in the right spot. So don't be dissuaded from trying out Portent in your deck just because other people aren't playing it. Maybe it's fantastic. I don't know. I mean, I've tried it a little bit and I haven't loved it, but sometimes it just works like Pondo where, yeah, you get the card you want, you shuffle them away with a fetch. The ones you don't want, it can be fantastic. All right, so you've got probe here. Again, that doesn't meet my definition, doesn't give you selection, but it meets your definition. Yep. Talk to me about probe.
Yeah, like that's what I was thinking when you were talking initially, like this card doesn't really give you an extra choice. It just condenses your deck a bit and gives you perfect information about what your opponent's doing. And so like it's commonly played in a range of decks. It also can enable Delve. So if you're playing Murktide Region or Gurmag or what have you, then it's good.
Any spell enables Delve.
Yeah. But it's for free.
Any instant and sorcery does. Yeah.
Yeah, it's for free.
Yeah. You didn't have Street Wraith. You didn't have Street Wraith.
Yeah. I know,
why did you put Street Wraith here?
Yeah, that's a good point. I probably should have. I just forgot.
Okay.
We should add Street Wraith to the list. But so Gitaxian Probe, yeah, it enables Delve, it draws a card, and it gives you perfect information. But it's one of those ones that, yeah, I think it's really interesting. Like it's played and playable, I think, yeah, if you don't really think about whether you want it. Like I asked myself, like, why doesn't every deck play Gitaxian Probe? Like, why doesn't Junk play Gitaxian Probe? Yeah. Like, to what extent does having information change the way you're going to play the game? So if you're planning on tapping out anyway, do you really gain something from having air in your deck, or do you just prefer you've only got 60 cards, do you prefer more business or a mana dork, like great redundancy and another kind of effect, rather than the information? So I find it interesting. I often don't play it. Yeah.
But it's not, yeah, you said rather than the information, but you can have Probe gives you the information and the next card. You're still having the business.
Yeah.
So you can play like Thomas. I think you're right. I think that you definitely, it's a serious and real question. Should, for example, Junk midrange play Gitaxian Probe? Because Thomas Bott played Gitaxian Probe in his artifact aggro list, even when he was playing Trinisphere and Charles of the Void.
Yeah.
So he obviously really valued the information in terms of sequencing his plays, knowing which threat to play first or how to play it against what his opponents was planning to do. I mean, I haven't reached that point yet, but because I think the life loss is a real cost, especially if you can't pay blue, isn't it? But you're not getting the options that selection provides, but you're getting options. That information is giving you the option of, well, maybe I should play this instead of that now.
Yeah, that's right.
So it is a powerful card. But just can you afford the life? If you're an aggro deck or have a lot of life gain, maybe it is quite free, and that the cost can be negated or ignored.
Yeah, I don't think I often find myself thinking like, what, if I want to spend my mana or whatever, or like if I want an effect, to what extent is this effect like as relevant as another effect in my 60?
But you're only, I know what you mean. Yeah, like by playing this, you're not playing another card in your deck, right? So, but that can be that can be an advantage as well. You're playing a 59 card deck.
Yeah, I know. This is why I don't know the answer to the question.
Yeah,
whether or not I should.
59 card deck should be, if 60 card deck's better than 61 card deck, which conventional wisdom says it is, and careful analysis also says it is, then maybe you should. If probe was didn't cost life, if it was just 0 mana, I think everyone would play it. I think it's just the life loss that means it's a real question. And I think that's the same with Horizon Canopy. Back in the day, like there was serious question, like Isaac Egan never played Horizon Canopy, even in the decks that would have otherwise wanted it, because he didn't think the life loss was worth it.
Yeah,
it's just the life loss. And probe's a card I play and enjoy in like a control deck because it gives me info, it fuels my JVP. But I definitely side it out against aggro. I can't afford the life loss there.
Yeah, I recall, because I'd want to like push my mana, like in the past as far as possible. I would feel compelled, if I was playing some kind of control deck, to play a basic land in the sideboard. If I was playing Gitaxian Probe in the main, just because like I was at the edge of my mana capacities, and if I had to cut the probe, I was going to potentially expand the size of my deck slightly. And that meant that I was less likely to hit the lands that I needed, but that's probably because I tended to play 4-color greed piles. So
no, I think that makes sense because it goes back to our point that the origin of like loading up on cantrips, it meant cutting down on lands. So if suddenly your cantrips are turned off by like a Charles for 1 or whatever, then you are going to struggle to find the mana you need. Yeah. So equally, if your probe's cut off through not being able to afford the life, then you're gonna go down a mana. So having that extra mana source in the sideboard makes sense. I've talked a bit about.
Yeah, I mean, lately, like when I was thinking about Gitaxian Probe, I end up playing Abundant Harvest over it because I'm playing 4 colors, right? And for me, like the way I lose is if I can't hit my colors. And so drawing an extra random card from my deck was less important than finding my next blue or green land or what have you in the early game.
Yeah, and that goes back to selection being different from just drawing a random card. Yeah. So Street Wraith is like Probe, but you don't get the information, so that's a big difference. So what do you get? You get something in the bin for Delve or Reanimate, and you get the option of playing a 5-mana 3/4 Swamp Walk late in the game.
Yeah, or reanimating this thing.
Yeah, but you don't see a lot of Street Wraith in just fair decks just because the life loss is relevant.
Yeah, I also think like Lurrus has also affected Street Wraith. So the kind of decks that might want to play Street Wraith also love having Lurrus. And so you kind of go, if you're on that kind of combo deck, there's kind of a disincentive naturally built in as a result of the companion.
So. Yeah. All right, so mental note and thoughts, Cal. They've seen a lot of play recently, especially with Light and Euro.
Yeah, I've liked these ones for a long time. Like they don't give you as much selection. Like you don't know what's going to get dumped into your bin. But if you play a high density of Delve spells, they read Dark Ritual, draw a card. So if they give you the shot, unlike the other cantrips of playing Tasiga or Murktide Regent, on the second turn. They also are more likely to make a Tarmogoyf, if you play Tarmogoyf, like big on the second turn as well. They're really powerful also that they're instants. So compared to the other cantrips, which we've talked about, which a lot of them are sorceries, you can kind of hold up your spell pierce if you're in a tempo-oriented strategy. And then you've still got, if you don't use a spell pierce on that turn, you've got something to spend the mana on, because usually you want to maximize mana expenditure on each turn. That's generally a good principle or heuristic, to live by in a fast format.
Yeah, so yeah, you're spending that mana and you're fueling the graveyard as a resource. And yeah, it's interesting that you said you're not getting as much selection. I would have said you're getting no selection, but yeah, you are getting some selection, because if you know the top card of your library or the opponent's library somehow, maybe through a reality chip or whatever, portent or whatever, then you can time it to give you selection. Which is interesting. This is probably a corner case, but it's there.
Yeah, Thought Scour is a cool one as well, because it has the portent effect. You can mess with your opponent's top two cards. Say if your opponent, mystical tutors for something, you can play, Thought Scour to interact with that. Or if we've had a depointing of personal tutor, and so you may see people playing more top deck strategies. So consider a Thought Scour as potentially a defensive spell as well against Doomsday, that kind of thing.
I remember like a year, or probably 2 years ago, like myself and others I know were, I'm not sure if you were included among them, but we were quite low on these cards, like Mental Note and Thought Scour. We thought, if you have to play these cards to get your deck doing its thing, then you're not on the right page somehow.
There's something wrong. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's been played for years. Like in UB, in like Brandon Owen's like Blue Black Delver, it was obviously a really important card for the reasons that you said. It empowered that delve, and time has proven that approach is very effective. And these cards are very popular now. But there was a time when, the fact that it didn't give you any selection, I found it was just spinning your wheels. It wasn't giving you enough. The graveyard, adding wasn't enough. But I think these days it is enough. Yeah, more than enough.
Yeah, Murktide and Euro make them good. I really I had a revelation recently in realizing that the extent to which Euro is a friend of cantrips rather than of mana dwarfs. So you want to be able to cast that thing at least twice. And so Mental Note and Thought Scour become central to rug-based strategies, just because they can refuel that card, and it's so powerful that it's worth it.
Yeah, so I can see that if you're thinking in those terms, then the selection isn't the primary value of the cantrip. It's just filling the bin.
Yeah, they're effectively mana. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of how I think about it.
But they need, but it's costing mana to get that mana.
Yeah.
So so you're right. Like if Thought Scour said, put the top card rather than the top two cards, maybe it wouldn't be good enough.
Well, that's what Consider does, right? But Consider gives you a choice.
Consider gives you a choice. Thought Scour doesn't. If Thought Scour just said, put the top card in, then draw.
No, not good enough.
Okay.
It's the depth, because it itself is in the bin, and then the other two cards as well. So it's puts three mana in the bin, basically, for a delve spell.
Okay.
It's a Dark Ritual draw card.
Well, before we get to Consider, we'll go to Opt, because Opt was like the first. Now, Opt's been around a long time. And I meant to say as well, even when Brainstorm was printed, it took quite a while for vintage players to realize, I'm told, the power of Brainstorm. They didn't just jump on it. I think they ignored it for a long time. And Opt as well. Opt has been playable for like decades, I think. And
I don't see a huge amount of it though these days. It's still around, but it's not in the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's popular in like standard, like lower powered forms where it's playable. But yeah, I mean, it had the unique selling point of being an instant, so you could get this small selection at instant speed. But yeah, for long, I don't think vintage. They didn't see that much playing vintage. Probably saw a little bit. But yeah, I played it in Highlander probably 2 years ago when Loot Tree came out. I wanted some more targets to copy with Loot Tree, and I found Opt was adequate, more than adequate in like a reactive deck where I valued the instant speed. I'm not on it at the moment though, because it is sometimes pretty low impact. Have you ever played Opt?
Nah,
Okay,
I don't know.
right.
Just never seemed to cut it in my.
No, you're
in
more
my
the
list.
sleight of
Yeah.
hand kind of guy. Yeah. Whereas Consider, and now Consider's been come out very recently, and people have jumped on that quickly. Why is Consider so much better than Opt?
Oh, I think it's sort of a halfway house between Thought Scour and Opt. If you know what I mean, it gives you more information than Thought Scour, but also fuels your graveyard not quite as much. But it does some of that. Yeah. So it's like Thought Scour with more options. I don't know. I kind of wax and wane on this one. Usually, like it'll get to a point where I'm this would be the last one that you're working out what to cut and what to include. And so the ones I toss up are usually Probe and Consider at the moment, because I ask myself, well, for Probe, to what extent do I really value having the information, and Consider what I prefer just to like go deeper with Thought Scour and Mental Note if I want a lot of actual business in my lists. But look, it's super popular in Breach, super popular in Rug Tempo. So it's definitely cuts it.
Do you think it cuts it in like even outside of like dedicated delve strategies? Like if you don't have that much graveyard synergy, just the odd card, do you think Consider's good enough then?
Don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I haven't tried it. It's an interesting discussion point, or the interesting point for the format to discover. I think people who play Consider should share their views on it. Yeah. I know Rob Luck played it in his winning list, so it's obviously got good pedigree there.
Yeah, Lachlan Saunders was playing it in Breach as well.
Okay.
Yeah, at Nationals. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I suppose what the question we're often coming to is like this kind of pantheon of like brainstorm, ponder, preordain, these unpointed, powerful cantrips. How close are these cards getting to there? You know what I mean? Like is Consider or sleight of hand or portent? Should they be considered, not far behind them or quite a bit far behind them? And I'm not sure. Yeah. My suspicion is quite a fair bit far behind them, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think you see them. Well, like the combo decks really value just churning through, right, and trying to find important pieces. So Consider is good in Breach from that perspective. I think it's also played like in the Rug Tempo list because they're trying to, up until recently, they're trying to run both Euro and Murktide, and you do need like quite a lot of graveyard fill, and there's only one of Mental Note and one of Thought Scour, right? And so you do end up valuing having more spells that just go into the graveyard as well.
Yeah, you're right. You're right to answer that question very contextually in terms of which archetype, which deck, what it's trying to do. There's no real point evaluating them in abstract. But all right, so they're the blue ones. So you talked about Abundant Harvest. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so green one. So it's in Japanese there, but it allows you to like name land or non-land, and then you keep revealing the cards from the top until you find the type that you're after. And so this is a great, for my mind, like I found it good, particularly in 4-color decks where finding colors of mana in the early game is really critical to make sure that you can continue to cast spells. It has, if you get one of your colors wastelanded or something like that, it really matters. I also play it with Omnath, Locus of Creation, because in the late game, if you've got that in play, finding a land in the late game can actually be really helpful. And also, if you really are starting to flood out, you can make sure you find business as well if you've got enough lands. And so, I found it to be pretty good, actually. And look, it's a green spell. So if you need to have enough green spells to pitch to like Endurance, if you're trying to stop Breach or Thassa's Oracle, you've got that one extra green spell that you mightn't otherwise have access to if you want to get up to, if I play pitch spells, I like to have at least 14 of that color cards in the deck so that I know I'm likely to have 2 of that color card in my hand when it matters.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was pretty quickly sold on this card because it fulfills that fundamental role of finding mana early and business late, which is what I look for in a cantrip. Or if I've got a mana. So mana screw and mana flood are some of the fundamental challenges for Magic deck design. Dealing with these, it's just a fundamental part of the game. Other card games won't have it. So having the right mix of lands and spells is just baked into the game of Magic, and so cantrips are a way of like solving that problem. And this card does that very directly. So which one do you want now? You know. So for me, that's really awesome, and I quickly put that just behind, say, Preordain, like the 4th best cantrip when I first saw it. I mean, I don't, but again, those abstract lists are fairly meaningless, but I think it's very powerful. Yeah. But is it powerful enough? So should Junk play that card?
I don't know. So, well, does it value, because if you're playing to a curve, right? So you invest a resource, which is a mana. Yeah. And if that deck is really about accelerating into 3 drops on the second turn, then you're investing mana in no board presence.
Yeah.
So you're probably messing up your curve a little bit in order to, to have that effect. But look, non-blue decks do have one kind of flaw in the mid game, and in not having those as much choice, so as much selection, and that's when the dust settles and everybody's playing that living off the top deck, and the blue player draws Ponder or Preordain, that can be the end of the game, because they just have basically three turns worth of better choices than the non-blue player, and so it would give a green deck a better shot at actually hitting business, and those decks are loaded with strong business spells. That's how they're built.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's a tough one. Yeah.
I don't think Becca would play it, because I think Becca would say, "Oh, it's not on plan. I want to commit to the board, and I'll curve out and commit to the board at all and win the board at all stages. So it's not on plan." But the question is it powerful enough to be played even though it's not on plan? For the reasons that you said.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about Mardu decks playing Faithless Looting. There's a similar argument to be made here. That you could play Abundant Harvest. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that this doesn't do is that Preordain, you can pick between 2 business spells or 2 lands. This doesn't give you
no doubt better. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just trying to articulate. I'm trying to think through the qualities of the card. Yeah. I think it's good. I think it's worth the mana.
I think it's look, I've tested a whole bunch of different cantrips in my 4-color decks, and this is one of my favorites. For that reason, how important is hitting that early land to you, or hitting lands in the first 4 turns? How important is that to you? And if it's important, I think it's particularly good in a Simic kind of deck.
Well, the real answer to that is if it's important. So I think every deck wants to ask itself, when can I afford to miss a land drop? Because that's what'll help you answer how many lands I should have in my deck. Yeah. So if you want to hit the first 4 lands, I mean, honestly, you probably should be playing 24 lands. But people who are used to having cantrips say, no, that's way too many. They get greedy.
Yeah.
And smartly so, they say, no, instead of those last 2 or 3 lands, I'll just play all these cantrips instead. We'll have to get to that question, how many cantrips should one play as well, when we get to the end of this list. All right, so Cling to Dust. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it says draw a card. I think it's one of the interesting ones that has an interactive effect. There's not many of those. We get down to the artifacts in a bit, but the blue ones don't necessarily. We talked about Portent and Thoughtscour being able to play with the top of the opponent's library, but Cling to Dust removes a card from the graveyard and draws a card, and that's super powerful. There's some of the cards that get played out of the graveyard these days. Are the difference between winning and losing. I think Michael Billinghurst is people are talking about it as a sideboard card when it first came out. And it's oh no, this is straight up main deck, a main deck card. If you take your opponent's lines like Diamond out of the graveyard in advance of them breaching, that combo's over. So it's super powerful. I like that it's an instant. It preserves timing options. it can help you just dig that one card deeper if you're struggling on mana at the same time as interacting with your opponent. So they can gain life. It's also like a good, if you need an entomb target, and there isn't an obvious one, and you want to use your mana, like you can entomb Cling to Dust, and then like have it there to escape if you need to draw cards in the late game. And
Yeah.
I played in a tournament, and I was playing against Michael Leslie, and I was on Thassa's Oracle. And I think I must have drawn about 4 cards off a Cling to Dust in the graveyard, and just kept me in the game. So I think it's super powerful.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's very unique. You did well to identify those different qualities, like the fact that it interacts with your opponent's resources in a card neutral way, like in the way that it replaces itself, and also offers a draw engine in the late game. It's super powerful. It's really powerful, this card. I think most black decks should play it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't ice the entire graveyard. So if the predominant combo deck in the format is Underworld Breach, and like we don't know where the meta game's going to go yet, but it's not quite as good there because if the Breach players can hold up 2 blue, they can play around any attempt to remove the Brain Freeze. So like, but it's still awesome.
Yeah, well, it's not. It's different from Neil Spellbomb. Neil Spellbomb does what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And is another awesome card. Although, it hasn't seen much main deck play, to be honest. For what it warrants, in my opinion, I'd pretty much play it in most of the time where I can.
Yeah, at the time of like sort of Grixis Oracle Breach, which is now like you can't play anymore. There was quite a few players who put it in the main deck, but some people shaved on it and just put it in the sideboard. But I really liked it with Lurrus, just like being able to repeatedly like nerf people's graveyards and draw a card every turn. Yeah, it's a draw engine and an interactive spell.
Yeah, so that could,
with Lurrus the Dream Den. Yeah.
Just before we move on to like the artifacts, like I'm sure there's other cards that interact. Like they probably cost 2 mana. Like give your creature +1/+1, draw a card, or make your creature indestructible, draw a card, or
there's all the other spell bombs. Like I probably should put them in the list. There's like Ether Spellbomb and Pyrite Spellbomb and stuff like that.
Yes, but you can't have your cake and eat it too there. You've got to, you have the effect, like you do the 2 damage or you draw the card. You never do both. That's the problem. Yeah. So they effectively just have cycled stapled onto them. Cycling stapled onto them. So, but yeah, interestingly, like I would play this, like if there was a card that was like 1 red, do 1 damage to any target, draw a card, I would play that. But there isn't that card, surprisingly. Yeah, I don't know. So that would be a card that interacts a little bit and draws a card. Yeah, so you've got Manamorphose, which is like, which is mana fixing, and a lot of the artifacts here are color fixing specifically. So that's the effect they provide in addition to the drawing of the card. There's no selection in the artifacts except for Mishra's Bauble, and we'll get to that. But yeah, I always tell you to play Manamorphose as like a second Gitaxian Pro, but you never do.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I just feel like it's a Storm card, like you still have to invest you have to tap the 2 lands. I don't know. And and then if you're just drawing around a card, you're not using that, then it's not as good. But there are certain decks where like that's really critical. So for Storm, like switching between red and black mana and things like that, that's like really critical. There are also decks that put a really high price on 0 mana spells. So this has like been a fixture in prowess decks and things like that, which are looking for like a critical mass of spells on a single turn.
So arguably
like,
any
Storm
delve
Archetype is like good for that. Yeah.
No, you're right. But arguably a delve deck wants Manamorphose for the same reasons it wants Probe.
Yeah, I think you just get to how many, like, It's kind of that. I go, oh, do I want that effect or do I want Manamorphose? And I end up like, picking something else. I don't know why. You're playing because you were playing in your control deck for a long time. Right?
Well, I think I played it because I had a Blood Moon strategy, and it's good against and with Blood Moon. It's also good if you have any cost reductions, like Storm has Helm of Awakening or whatever, which allows this to generate mana. Yeah, like Patrick Traven was big on it. It's just basically being free. It was turning up in a lot of like burn decks, just as a way to like play like a smaller deck and fuel the graveyard for like Grim Lavamancer.
Oh yeah.
Even when they were playing Eidolon, they didn't care. They wanted Manamorphose even more. So I think it's super powerful. The problem is if you can randomly run into a spell snare when you're not banking on it.
Yeah.
That sucks. And if you ever want to like use 1 mana but save 1 mana for the next turn, like to hold up Spell Pierce or something, it's really bad there as well. And it can be bad as a top deck where you just have to name a random colors. Sometimes you get punished by drawing your double white card or whatever. So it has downsides, but it also has big advantages. Yeah.
It's really
cool. So a lot of these cards, like the eggs and Chromatic Sphere, Chromatic Star, they fix colors. So you lose a mana. But that's normal. Most of these cantrips cost a mana. The ones that don't, and there's a bit more graveyard disruption in Phyrexian Furnace and Scrabbling Claws.
Well, I want you to talk about Scrabbling Claws and Phyrexian Furnace and Mishra's Bauble and Urza's Bauble, because you always play these 4 in your control decks, and like the 2 claws, or the Furnace and the Claws always wreck me, because I like to abuse my graveyard. But also you were playing Bauble and the 2 Baubles in control before, without Lurrus, and without Dragon's Rage Channeler. So a lot of people have got on the Baubles because they want to get Delirium for Dragon's Rage Channeler lately. But like you had used these cards as kind of like piggy banks for cards in a balanced strategy. Can you like take us through that?
Yeah. All right. So yeah, my deck was like a balance based or mirror blue, white, red control, which I called Bourbon and Coke. But yeah, so I was looking for ways to deploy my cards to the board, balance, and then like get the cards back. So yeah, I described them. You just use the term piggy banks. So you put your card, your Mishra's Bauble, down on the board, you cast balance, and then you cash it in to draw back, and then you're up cards relative to your opponent. I also wanted ways to like trigger Mentor as well. So cantrips, and you talked about prowess as well. How these are really good ways of just getting Mentor and other prowess triggers. So I experimented with like loading up on these kind of baubles and little artifact effects to abuse balance and Mentor. And yeah, like I got all the way to Pyrite Spellbomb. I found that was just playable because the removal sometimes was helpful because it was a reactive deck. It didn't want to. But yeah, it was. I wouldn't play Pyrite Spellbomb now. I don't think it cuts it now. But yeah, I did find
Lurrus. I think it's like good with Lurrus. But that's
fine. Yeah. I'm not talking about recursion synergies. I'm just talking about fair application. But then what I discovered about Mishra's Bauble, and this is probably what others have discovered, why it's independently or before me, why it's so popular in Legacy, is that if you just have a fetch land, it gives you free selection. Like it allows you to look at the top card, and then you can choose to shuffle your fetch land now or next turn to shape the next draw step you have off the Bauble. And that for me was like mind blowing. Like the fact that you could get like a scry 1 for 0 mana, even though you draw the card slightly slower. Like it's not as fast as Opt, but you get the card later, but you get the free scry. That for me was just like broken. I'm going to play it in every deck with fetch lands. Yeah.
And that's good. Like so, like you try. I've been mucking around with Underworld Breach, and I want to play Nihil Spellbomb if I'm going to play Lurrus, right? But often people play Urza's Bauble and Mishra's Bauble together, but Mishra's Bauble is like, I think, like light years more powerful than Urza's Bauble.
I mean, instead of selection with Urza's Bauble, you just get a little bit of information in looking at a card in their hand. Sometimes that's super helpful, especially if they've only got 1 card in hand. But most of the time, it's kind of random and irrelevant. Well, not irrelevant, but it's of minimal value. Certainly compared to Scry 1, it's nowhere near that. So yeah, Mishra's Bauble I think is way better. And then the claws. Well, yeah, I mean the claws and the furnace. Like, well, I started my deck building in earnest in Highlander, like when Craddy Jund had like just won the national championships, which is like this mid-range Landsy strategy, and I just was playing a control deck I just didn't want to lose to Life from the Loam. I needed main deck interaction to not lose to Life from the Loam. So these were kind of ways that I could play in a Jeskai deck. I could not lose.
They were playable in Vintage at some point in time as well, right?
Oh yeah, the reason I picked Claws was it was like a sideboard card in my control deck. Oh well, in an Esper control deck that designed by Steve O'Connell of Zerbus. And he used it as a sideboard card against Goblin Welder, against Control Slaver kind of strategy. Yeah, where he had an Esper deck, and he just needed ways to negate the advantage of Goblin Welder. And because it was a control mirror, he needed to do that in a way where he wouldn't go down on cards. And so I liked Furnace and Claws as a second Furnace, as a way to disrupt Graveyard without going down on cards, which is what Cling to Dust does as well, in an even better way.
I probably should have put Relic of Progenitors in there.
Well, the problem with Relic of Progenitors is that it stuffs up your own graveyard. Yeah. And so that's a big cost, especially in the era where we're talking about empowering Delve and getting graveyard synergies and all that. It's a huge cost. Furnace and Claws don't have that. And Scrap and Claws has some other cute interactions where you can target your own graveyard and choose the card that with the tap ability. And that's relevant against Klothos. You can fizzle that ability, and against Deathrite Shaman if they're trying to do that. So I actually do prefer Claws just for those fringe reasons.
No, it's definitely relevant against Klothos, like being able to neutralize that. Like, if your opponent's investing 3 mana in Klothos and it's not doing anything. Like, if that's just it's just a massive tempo advantage. Yeah,
but we kind of got off topic, like, because I don't consider these cantrips, but they don't give me selection, but they give me interaction in a way that allows me not to go down on cards. That means that makes them main deckable, and it means I can sometimes just win. I think I've won a game like just with Scrubbing Claws turn 1 because my opponent had like Snapcaster, Dig Through Time, Tassigar, all those cards, and I just kept tapping it, and I didn't know what was happening, but they just conceded like after a few turns. And so these cards can be powerful in the Delve era. However, like I'm down to just playing one main deck, because if you draw 2 against a very aggressive deck, that tempo loss, even when you're trying to cycle them away, is very real, and you just get beaten on the board. So that's where the tempo cost of cantrips can really buy you against aggressive decks. All right, so do you want to say anything more before we jump onto some alternatives to these?
No, I don't think Ponder or Preordain require too much analysis. Apart from there's often difficult questions around when and whether to fetch around those cantrips, I think. Ponder.
Fetch before or after Preordain.
Yeah, and Ponder, do you want to? I think it depends on what point in the game you're at. Are you going to want all 3 of those cards or not, or can you afford to give yourself the option to shuffle? And that depends on how many lands you kind of go and play.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a whole other discussion to be had in how to play these cards and when to play them. Like, I know that. I mean, you could write a whole probably thesis on brainstorm and when to play it. You could definitely write a book on it. I know Becca would just say quickly, when you cast Preordain, you have to, and like Thought Seize, you have to know what you're looking for. You have to have a reason to play it. Don't just throw it out there because you get the card back. If you don't know what you're looking for, maybe you should hold off on it. Maybe you can't because the tempo loss later you can't afford, but maybe you can hold off on it. The cards do tend to become more powerful as the game goes on. You're clear on what you need and so on.
Unless you're going to miss a land, try and hold it. I think it's probably what I'd say early in the game.
Yeah. I don't like turn 1 Ponder, for example, but I do like turn 1 Preordain.
It's funny because it's different to the other Eternal formats, where if you've got 4, you can 4 Brainstorms and 4 Ponders, you just chuck them out there. It's like there's a heuristic. It's just like Island Ponder Keep, right? In Legacy, so we just can't do that in this format. It's just different.
Yeah. I mean, my rule of thumb with fetch lands and Ponder and Preordain is I'll ponder. I'll always ponder first and then fetch. So I'm happy just to keep the one card, the best card out of the 3.
Yeah.
And with Preordain, I'll fetch first and then Preordain because I might want to keep both cards.
I usually fetch before preordaining, but I think Ponder's a difficult one.
Yeah.
Usually it depends on when I'm casting.
No, there's always situational. All right. So what happens if you don't want to play blue? Right? You don't have many options. You've got some artifacts that just cantrip, for want of a better word. They just cycle through. They don't give you selection. And you've got a few corner cases in Faith's Looting, Cling to Dust, and Abundant Harvest. This is notably an exception. Yeah, if you're not playing blue, what are you doing? You're not getting that selection. So how do you get options in a different way? So this is something I've been forced to think through lately because I'm trying like an artifact deck, for instance. And one of the challenges, there's multiple challenges to playing and building an artifact deck, but one of them is, like, okay, you can solve the problem of mana screw by playing lots of lands. Fine. You're going to find your lands. But then you run into the problem of mana flood in the late game. So how do you solve that? Like, how do you just gain the advantage of cantrips without having access to blue? Okay, so you want other spells that give you like mana early and business late. Okay, so I'll just talk about Llanowar Elf, right?
Yeah.
So this has been around since Alpha. There's a few Alpha cards here. Now these aren't cantrips. These don't replace them. They don't all replace themselves and offer selection, but they may fulfill similar functions in terms of providing mana early and business late. Okay. So Llanowar Elf, it gives you mana early. Okay. It's a mana door. Now
I agree with that.
Okay. Yeah. Now, can you afford to top deck it on turn 6 or whatever?
Feels bad. Unless you got Skull Clamp or something like that. Because
Exactly.
because I've been playing, I've played decks with 8+ mana dorks, and if you're gonna go down as deep as Llanowar Elf, you're gonna need something to do with it beyond just relying on it as a 1/1 on turn 6.
But this is the thing, like, so we raised the question, we didn't answer it, like, how many cantrips should you play? Like, at what point is Llanowar Elf better or a mana dork better than the worst cantrip in your deck? And that's really hard to answer because they do different things, but they also do similar things. And that's what I'm trying to propose: give you mana early and business late. The business late comes in the form of like, okay, well, you can chump block and you can attack with it. It's only a 1/1, but it's something. And yeah, if you've got Skull Clamp, Birthing Pod, other ways to, or even Oko to upgrade this thing, other ways to use it in a meaningful way, then it can be relevant in the late game. But I know you were confronting the question recently, like, should I play cantrips or mana dorks? And when do I switch from one to the other? Like, how many of each should I play if I want to play both?
Yeah.
How did you answer that question?
Well, usually in part it came down to curve questions. So I was like, okay, so how many 1 mana spells do I want to play? So I generally prefer 10, but I settled on 9 ultimately. On the understanding I might have to, fetch up a shockland tapped on my opponent's end step on the odd occasion. The other overarching consideration was the overwhelming power of Euro and Murktide Regent. And so I found that the mana dork strategy meant that I was tending only to get 1 escape from Euro, whereas playing Thought Scour and Mental Note over a dork made it more likely that I could play those premium threats and in particular play Euro more than once. In addition, like, if you play things like Jace's Prodigy or Dreadhorde Arcanist, being able to double Thought Scour over like a mana dork has benefits. Like, you can refuel your graveyard more quickly in a way that you can't if your Llanowar Elf dies. Cantrips aren't as vulnerable to interaction. So if you invest your 1 mana in your Llanowar Elf and then it just gets killed, but people tend not to counterspell cantrips. Like, sometimes there are edge cases where they do in the mid to late game, but the cantrips tend to still have value in a way that, in the mid to late game in a way that a mana dork doesn't, unless you're really dedicated to finding ways to leverage them. So yeah, you could use Birthing Pod or Skull Clamp. You can turn them into Elks with Oko, and you can obviously, like, experimenting with the Royal Scions to give them Trample and First Strike using the middle ability. But there's just, I don't know. In the end, the balance I arrived at was the 2 hierarchs, and then a bunch of cantrips.
Oh, so
And that's just practical wisdom, right? Just testing over and over again. That seemed to work the best.
Well, that was where the power.
Exalted.
That was where the power level kind of line was drawn through experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and just having the right quantity to be able to use Murktide and Euro, and also have a bit of protection from Blood Moon, and also the Exalted on the 2 hierarchs is relevant to winning combat. So yeah, that was how the calculus played out. It's kind of like you end up, I don't know, just muddling. I just ended up muddling my way through based on testing. Yeah,
you made observations, and you tuned your deck. Yeah. That's what you got to do. Theory is just a starting point. Yeah. So, what was I going to say? Yeah. So this was an insight I came to recently. It's like, so the blue decks, they cast their cantrips and then they recoup the mana through delve. But the mana dork decks cast their mana early and then they recoup the cards in the late game through Skull Clamp or Birthing Pod. Yeah, so they're kind of doing similar things but in different order and with different tools. So yeah, in other words, the blue deck converts its options into mana, like its option generating cards into mana, and the junk or the Llanowar Elf deck converts its mana generating cards into options like later. Yeah,
that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. So we'll talk about lands as well. Like as I said before, like utility lands have since antiquities, provided like mana early and business late. You can have your mana Mishra's Factory provide mana when you need it early on, and then later on it can be a creature. So other lands do this as well. Like, Urza Saga is a very egregious example. But, shocking. But like, so that's giving you the best of both. Yeah, but like Lonely Sand. So I asked the question, Lonely Sandbar, right? It's just it's come into play tapped blue land that has cycling for 1 blue. I asked the question before, like, is Highlander a sleight of hand format? And the answer is maybe not. Well, who knows? Is it a Lonely Sandbar format? Like,
I think it might have been in 2017.
Like why not? Well, it gives you mana early and business late, but the problem is the mana early is bad, like it's low, and the business late is just random. It's a random card. It's not something specific.
Yeah, I think like in practical terms, like you would never play Lonely Sandbar over like Nurturing Peatland or Horizon Canopy or something anymore. Like because those ones give you the actual mana early, and then gives you the business late because you can like chuck them in when you've got enough lands.
And they give you color fixing as well.
Yeah, and if you're going to pair that with like Life from the Loam or Ren and 6 to create an engine, you probably prefer to have a canopy land, I'd say. So I think like Sandbar, because it comes into play tapped, is now outclassed.
Really. Yeah, you're right. I didn't think of that. So Horizon lands, they're a perfect example. They're like a way to get the functional equivalent of a cantrip. It gives you the mana early and the business late. The problem is it's better as mana early than a cantrip. You don't have to invest the mana to get that, but it's worse later as business because you do have to invest. Well, you're investing an extra mana and you're not getting selection. You're just getting a random card.
Yeah, you're investing 2 mana to draw a card late, really. Yeah, because you lose the canopy itself.
Yeah. And irrigated farmland does that too. Like, but again, the mana early is worse. Than Horizon Canopy, but you don't have to pay life. So the life loss is real. But yeah, obviously the Horizon lands have proven to be powerful in the right dose. Yeah. Like Inventors Fair, Academy Ruins, these are just cards that provide mana early and business late in different ways. Now this and cycling lands, but yeah, we've said Horizon lands are kind of probably the best. But yeah, like Beseiju. So this is a new kind of, I think,
broken, busted in half. Awesome.
Well, I have to tell a bit of a story. Like, when I took a long break from Magic, when I came back when Mirrodin was being drafted, and I started drafting Mirrodin, and there were all these spell effects stapled onto creatures. Like you had a 3 mana 2/2 who could also be a disenchant, something like that. And coming from like my 4-player multiplayer casual kind of background, I was like, this is awesome. Like I can just play all creatures now. I don't have to play just standalone spells. So why wouldn't I just play all creatures? Like if I can. Now, I don't think we're there yet that we can have 60 lands in our deck. But if they printed enough good Versagey type cards, which are good mana and good business, you could conceivably do that. Then you wouldn't need cantrips, and you'd fundamentally solve the problem of getting the right mix of lands and business by all your cards being both lands and business all the time.
Yeah.
We're a long way off that.
When they printed this, I was just like, oh, thank God I can play 22 lands in my deck, you know, and not feel like I was at the margins, like I was going to have something useful to do. Like it was just such a, it's so good. And then like, because I like playing Red and 6, like you can just like destroy artifact-based strategies. Like, amazing.
Yeah. But my point is about, because we're talking about cantrips, not just how good Versagey is. It's like, it's both mana and business. And so if you're playing a non-blue deck, for instance, or if you're playing a blue deck and you want even more options, these kind of cards provide that. And there are other lands not quite as good that do that, like Kazandu Mammoth and Valakut Awakening. Now they come into play tap lands, so you're paying a fair cost. You're paying a cost in tempo for getting this option of mana early, business late. But you're paying that mana with Preordain as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which you can't forget. So I know Sarv is quite high on Kazandu Mammoth. He's played it a bit in his decks. So the mana early is bad because it comes into play tap, but the business late is not just a random card. It's a known effect that is on plan for the deck that you're playing it in. So I think these are playable. And the mana early isn't that bad because if you're thinking that Preordain, if you remember that Preordain costs a mana. But the problem is that the delve mechanic undoes that cost. All right, so Shatterskull Smashing, right? It's better. It takes it to the next level because it's the mana early is better. It can come into play untapped at the cost of 3 life. You've got the option of tapped or untapped land, and provided the business late is on plan and sufficiently efficient in terms of mana costs and effects, it's good. I think this card's good. I'd play this in a burn deck and all sorts of other decks.
It is good. On the other end of it, it's good.
Yeah. now, Timeless Dragon and Ruin Grinder, right? They provide mana early as well because you can cycle for 2 mana. You can tutor up your plains or your mountain. Okay. But that early mana is bad.
Yeah, having to pay 2 is not.
2 is a lot. Good. Yeah. But the business late is better. Okay, so you're getting, and the nice thing about Timeless Dragon is you get both. You do get this plane cycling, and then you get the creature. It's not one or the other.
Yeah, I think
with Ruin Grinder, it's one or the other.
Also, I think Timeless Dragon, like it fills the 2, the 4, and the 5 slot in the deck. Like the variable mana cost is good as well.
Yeah, I just think
it gives you a lot of options. Yeah,
exactly, and that's what we're talking about, getting options, and conceptually, these cards, I like the design of these cards in ways that give you options and mana early, business late, like cantrips, in just non-standard ways. So if Wizards keeps printing these, you're going to be able to access the boon and benefit of cantrips in different ways. Yeah, and I think you need to be on the lookout for that. And the problem is are they just costed well enough? Are they sufficiently efficient? Sometimes they aren't, and sometimes they get close, or they are.
Yeah, I find like if I see a little 2 or anything more in that cycling ability, I balk at it. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah. So whenever I see one that's got 1, it's like, ooh, that seems like it could be worth looking at. You know?
Yeah. Well,
so
I was going to
look out for that. Yeah.
On your initial definition of a cantrip, any card that cycles for 1 mana is a cantrip.
That's probably true.
Well, it replaces itself, and it's cheap at a cheap cost. But the problem is you don't just want to be cycling you want to get some incidental effect stapled onto it.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
so sensor cycles for one, doesn't it?
yeah.
So Sarv was always pretty big on that. I don't know if he's playing it anymore, but
Yeah.
he liked it.
Yeah. All right, so yeah, Mind Stone, that's mana early, business late in the right artifact deck. Maze Mind Tome is like a expensive preordain.
Yeah.
Now Smuggler's Copter is like Faithless Looting. It gives you that. It's selection through looting or hand fixing through looting, drawing and discarding. But it's in a way that arguably doesn't put you down on cards because you get this vehicle that you can use. I think it's powerful in the right deck. And this is something we haven't talked about, like, and I'm pushing it here. Like, this is more like Howling Mine and Dark Confidant. They're not really, they're more comparable to A-Call than Brainstorm or whatever, because they're generating card advantage. They're giving you options through drawing more cards. Yeah, but so if you can't find cantrip functional equivalents in your deck, then just keep drawing cards, basically. Like, it's the best way to get options, like, if you can.
Yeah, Howling Mine's super, like, a bit riskier. I mean, Dark Confidant, you got the life loss, whereas giving your opponent additional resources. But you're playing some strategies where you can tap your own Howling Mine, turn it off your opponent.
Yeah, I'm not saying these cards are good. I'm just saying these.
Oh, Dark Confidant's good.
Yeah.
It's real good.
But I'm just saying how they function, where they.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
How they can function. Yeah. And so you just be on the lookout for these types of effects and how they can improve your deck. Like Expedition Map, that's mana early, business late, just by virtue of being a tutor. Like, any cheap tutor can probably fulfill the role of a cantrip. A cantrip is kind of like a bad tutor. It's just a very small tutor.
Yeah.
Selection, it doesn't give you tutoring. So, like, want this one or that one or whatever. But imagine if, they, instead of preordain, they printed, one black, go and get any card and put it in your hand. Like, that's better. Yeah, well, that's better than a can. That's better than a can.
Well, it's better than Demonic Tutor, right? So,
yeah. I'm just saying.
Like multiple points. Yeah.
I'm saying my point is, like, tutoring. If you can find an efficiently costed tutor that fits your plan, it can kind of functionally equivalent as a cantrip, provided it can give you mana early enough. Expedition Map is, it can just do it because you can go and get Mishra's Workshop or Tolarian Academy or whatever and get the mana back that you've put into it. But yeah, like maybe Sylvan Scrying is similar, especially if you can Sylvan Scry for like a land that's business late. Like, you've got to be able to tutor up for mana early, business late. So that might be, the business late might be Beseiju or Urza Saga or Ivergan or whatever. All right, and these last ones are like Witching Well. It's giving you like selection on the entry, and then like card advantage on the backside. It's just expensive. That's all, to get the cards out of it. But it does function as a cantrip if you can ever cash it in.
That's been seen plenty of play, like in Tolarian Academy and Tinker.
Yeah, surprised. I didn't think it was good at first, but then having played with it a bit, and Lachlan Saunders played it a bit as well, I think it is good. And here's a new one as well. This is the last one I'll finish on. This is interesting, kind of fringy card, like the Moon Snare Prototype. If you have another artifact on the board, Mishra's Bauble or whatever it is, ideally Howling Mine, you can like tap that and this to get a mana early. It's quite cheap. So it can function as like half a Llanowar Elf. You need to have something else to empower it. But it's also business late. It's not just that mana early. You can channel it to like bounce a card. Yeah. So I just think that's, I'm not saying it's good or powerful, but I'm just saying it fits this criterion of like mana early, business late, which once you start to fill your deck with these things, you're going to have a lot of options.
Yeah. And
you can play these things alongside cantrips as well. But yeah, I think the more you can get these effects, the more options you're going to have, and the more you're going to be able to keep up with blue decks. Yeah, that's my thesis. Yeah.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting. Like, they're obviously not as powerful as the 1 mana blue, like core ones, but there are options out there, I guess, is the thing that people can play around with, and like,
And they might get more
it's not like-
efficient.
this is
They
not
might
the
get
kind
more
of format
efficient.
like that. Yeah.
No, what do you say, Dan? Sorry.
I was going to say, like, Highlander's not the kind of format that's kind of like solved as quickly as other formats. So there's heaps of design space that's still available. So maybe people can sort of make these kinds of cards work.
Yeah, you can't play 4 preordains. You got to go elsewhere. Yeah, and if you're not playing blue, then you need to think about how you're getting options. I think as these cards keep getting printed and they become more efficient, they're going to be more attractive, and they're going to be able to. Non-blue decks are going to be able to compete more consistently and reliably with blue decks. That's my hope. Especially cards like Shadow Skull Smashing, like the modal lands one side and spell the other, which Mishra's, Factory was the first one, arguably. I mean, you've got heaps of utility lands, Wandering Fumarole. It's just a matter of how efficient are they? How good is the front? How good is the mana side? How good is the business side? But yeah, like Shadow Skull Smashing is pushing it. It's getting up, and Beseiju is really pushing it. You know what I mean? And hopefully,
I think you're right. I think you're
pushing that.
Yeah, because like when you test against, like if you're playing on blue deck, there's this point in the mid game where the dust settles, and like I was saying before, like the blue player has the advantage then, like because of the selection, whereas you're more likely to rip lands off the top. And so the extent to which they turn lands into business, can help the non-blue deck. I think that's right.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up. Do you want any final sentiments about cantrips?
No, I don't think so. I think we've probably covered most of the ground. I still don't know what the answer is for how many. I think probably practical wisdom is like 8 is kind of getting there. Like you can get to a point where you've got too much air in your deck and you're just losing tempo. You're just cantripping into more cantrips. So you just have to test your way through all of that. And it really depends on to what extent your deck values digging for particular things. You probably have more cantrips in your combo decks and things like that than others. But it's a matter of working your way through.
Well, I'm looking at your deck now. So I'm just going to see how many you got. You got 1, Abundant Harvest, Brainstorm.
Yep.
Mental Note, Preordain, Ponder.
5.
6. And Thought Scour. That's 6.
Yep.
Yeah. So you overshot with 8.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because but I could turn the Noble Hierarch and the Ignoble Hierarch into another 2. So there's like the, there's that number of proactive 1 mana spells. And in the end, that was the mix that I landed on.
Yeah.
You'll see that like I've paid a lot of attention to having 9 proactive 1 mana plays as well, because I really want to be tapping out in this list. And then using my counter magic late. So I don't sort of count when I'm looking at that. I don't count things like Swords to Plowshares as a turn 1 play, even though it might be. Yeah.
No, but I just think it's interesting. Like, so for your deck, the power level of the cantrips has stopped at like Thought Scour, Mental Note, and at that point, the mana dorks have become better, better than the next cantrip.
I think so.
Yeah, or not in abstract, but relative to your plan in terms of Euro and everything else.
Like look at how greedy it is. Like there's something you get from that. As I trimmed dork after dork, that's kind of where I got to.
Yeah. All right. Well, we hope you've enjoyed today's chat and made you think a bit about cantrips, what their role is, how you can fill your deck with cantrips, how you can fill your deck with cards that aren't cantrips but function comparably. And I think next time we're going to talk about counter magic as well.
Yeah, cool.
All right. See you then.
Cool. Thanks, Drew. See you.
Yeah.